So hello, today I'm at St Lawrence's Church in St Lawrence, Essex, and I'd like to talk to you about the history of the church and the village here. So St Lawrence is a village in Essex on the Dengie Peninsula. It's 4 miles from Southminster and 13 miles from Malden and Southwood and Ferrers. It's in a remote part of Essex, and the land is rural, which tapers down towards St Lawrence Bay and the Blackwater Estuary. Locals call the village the Stone. The land also has an island called Ramsey Island. The elevation here is about 9 metres and the population is about 1,600. Historically, St Lawrence would have been on the route between Malden and Southminster, most likely dating to the Roman period. Now, during the Saxon period there were 2 manors houses here, or manors, and in 1066 Christchurch Abbey of Canterbury owned one and Ingvar of Bursted owned the other. Now move forward to 1086 and we have a detailed account of life here. The Normans stated that there were 11 households. 3 of those would have been slaves. There would have been 1 plough team and 1 freeman and 24 sheep. So a fairly small affair. Now Canterbury continued owning St Lawrence Hall, and Ranulph, brother of Iglar, was the tenant-in-chief of the second hall, with William of Bowes as lord. The name of St Lawrence comes from the saint who was a deacon of Rome in 257 AD, and he was responsible for all the material goods of the Christian church, and he was responsible for distributing to the poor. Now the Romans at this time were non-Christian, and they ordered Lawrence to present the riches of the church to them. So Lawrence said, "Behold, in these poor persons the treasures which I promised to show you." And because of that, they martyred him in a terrible fashion. St Lawrence is actually the patron saint of the poor, comedians, cooks and schoolchildren. Now, the original St Lawrence Church was built during the 12th century and was appropriated by Beeley Abbey near Malden until 1438. In 1878, the old Norman church was completely razed to the ground and then completely rebuilt, and that's what we see today. So this is truly a Victorian period church. And that is, I'm afraid, all I can tell you on the history of this church. We will have a look at the church itself. You take this road here, this goes to Southminster. And if you take this road here, this one goes to St Lawrence Bay and Chelmsford direction. So what I can tell you is, during the 1840s, Ramsey Island had just one building on it, known as Wick Farm. And until the 1890s, it was more or less that way, until the railway came to Southminster. Now folk would arrive from all over with their bikes and then cycle around and explore places like this. You can't blame it, it's such a nice part of Essex. Now nearby Burnham on Crouch in 1903 had become a yachting centre, and boats would explore the creeks and estuaries here. So if we look at the land here, you can see the black water there, and that's Ossie Island, where the Vikings fought Britain off in 991 AD. And just down there is St Lawrence Bay. There's a road that goes down there, obviously. And you can see it, the Blackwater estuary widens out there. And straight ahead is Bradwell on sea. And if you look beyond those trees, you can see the wind farm there. Now that wind farm is quite close to St Peter on the Wall Chapel, which St Ced opened. So after World War I, the building plots were sold in the bay, St Lawrence Bay, and the Timmocks estate was formed, which is down there and faces the Blackwater estuary. Now by 1938 it was known locally as a stone, and 10 years later St Lawrence would be granted its own yacht club licence, and then it was called Stone Yacht Club as it is today. Now during World War II, the old oyster cottages were used to hold prisoner of war, or Italian prisoner of war, and the saltines down there were used by the Navy, complete with a pier. Now the Royal Navy after World War II dismantled all of the equipment, including the D-Day Mulberry harbours. And an interesting connection, some of the Italians from this period, they married local ladies here. Now if you remember the old Wick Farm, the lonely building on Ramsey Island, well in 1948 it's become St Lawrence Yacht Club. Now by the 1950s the first stone sailing club race took place, and down there's a World War II pillbox, and Percy Young, I guess he stood on it and used his shotgun to initiate the race. So 70 years on now, and you can now go down there and do sailing and windsurfing and paddleboarding and kayaking. They've got social events and all kinds of things going on. Now in 1971, St Lawrence Church established its meeting place in the village hall, and they carry out coffee and bridge meeting games, etc. And then in 2004 they established the Friends of St Lawrence, Newland, to care for this church. Now if we look at this gate here, I believe it's called the Lynch Gate. This was restored. It's quite unusual because it's got a World War I memorial there, and it lists the killed, died, wounded and served. Right. So we'll have a look at the church itself. So this is South Porch and the nave behind that. And there seems to be quite a lot of pigeons in there roosting. It's a fairly standard Victorian church. Now this new building here was excavated, or the grounds of it were, 2015, and they found, archaeologists found 18 unknown graves and a V-shaped ditch, which they're not sure of what the purpose was. They've called this building the Anne Harper Room. And the company or firm called Bakers of Danbury built the new extension. They also restored the gate. What I did notice was this building here. It's got some of the oldest stonework I've seen. Most likely to be Norman, and could possibly well be from the original south porch. And you can see there's an unusual stone there. Now then, if we go over to the north side, spectacular views here. So again, it's fairly standard, but it's weathered really well. Now in 2018, this telescope and display board was installed, opened by the Right Honourable John Whittingdale MP, and even got a blessing from the Dean of Chelmsford. We've got lovely flowers out this time, yeah. So on this board it goes into detail where everything is laid out. So that's where we are, and you can see the wind farm there. There's the oldest church in Essex, and Osey Island. Northey Island is before Osey Island when you go into Malden. There's Malden, and then we'd have Danbury up here somewhere, and Chelmsford would be up here. Yeah, very peaceful, very nice. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.